Alright my friends, let me show you how fast this build renders designated punching bag the Oathbreaker Knight completely helpless while barely spending any resources. Note that we've applied one buff to ourselves, that buff lasts all day, so no resource expenditure there, and then before combat begins, we're going to cast Spirit Guardians for radiant damage. Of course we could cast this using a higher level spell slot if we wanted more damage. Then we're going to enter turn-based mode and step just a little bit closer so that the Oathbreaker Knight is within range of our Spirit Guardians. Then we're going to double cast Bone Chill on him. I have to back up just a little bit here so he's out of range of the... out of melee range. Double cast Bone Chill. And having hit him with 2 Bone Chills, he's already at 10 Radiating Orb stacks and 4 stacks of Reverberation. If we had missed with one of the Bone Chill shots, he would still be at 10 Radiating Orb stacks because we can stack it even further with Dazzling Breath as a bonus action. So, with just a single bonus action, even more radiant damage, and our Reverberation, this is his 3rd saving throw against Reverberation, so it knocks him prone. So, with just a single action, we've left him prone at a -10 attack penalty, unable to heal thanks to the Bone Chill, and on the ground with even more stacks of Reverberation, and that's all with spending only a single level 3 spell slot and a cantrip, as well as the cast of an all-day ability. Alright, let's get to the build. Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 Patch 8 character building guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today, we're building a character that uses both light and darkness to do some of the best damage in the game in the early levels. In fact, this is one of the strongest possible characters in the game now in the early levels of play, which are the most difficult, so that should make any honor mode run significantly smoother. Later on, we have access to some of the most powerful mechanics in Baldur's Gate and make better use of them than just about any other character. So this character remains a powerhouse from level 1 through level 12, giving your party incredible damage, incredible utility, great supporting abilities, and everything wrapped into a single package. Because of the power of light and dark embodied in a single character, I'm calling this the Daughter of Twilight. Let's get building. Before I begin though, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Tarantula for the $5 donation twice over, so $10, Pod Terapoitin for the 27 kroner, Ken Porter for the $20, and Courtney and Obada Khalid for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate the support, and please correct my pronunciation of your names. I'm very behind on saying thank you, but I really appreciate it. Alright, let's build the character. I'm using Shadowheart as the example character here, because as you can tell from the name, this build is based in part on her lore and storyline, and fits the character extremely well, especially with her progression depending on what story path you take going through the game. If you're building this as a custom character, then I would recommend Halfling. This build gets all the weapon and armor proficiencies that it needs by default and doesn't require anything in particular from its race selection, so Halfling's ability to reroll 1s just makes you vastly safer as you go through the game, and also makes your damage output even more reliable than it already is. Gnome for advantage on mental saves can keep you safer as well, and of course Wood Elf or Half Wood Elf for the bonus movement speed, Dwergar for the out-of-combat invisibility, or Githyanki for the once-per-day Misty Step all make excellent choices as well to keep this character safer and just make your whole deal, which is being reliable, even more reliable to execute. At first level, we're going to start with Cleric, and for our subclass, we're going to take Death Domain. Of course, this is a patch 8 build, so we want to use the new stuff, but the great thing about Death Domain is just how strong it is, starting right from first level. Death Domain Cleric gets the Reaper ability, which lets your necromancy cantrips that only target a single creature, target 2 creatures instead. This also allows you to double up these cantrips on a single creature at time of recording, so you effectively just get double damage with all of your cantrips in the early game. This combines extremely well with the Toll the Dead cantrip, which does a d12 of damage, to give you a 2d12 damage cast right from the beginning of the game. An incredibly large amount of burst damage at this point in the game, and we are only going to make that stronger as we continue to progress. So, Death Domain Cleric not only gives us, of course, a very lore-friendly build for Shadowheart, it's one of Shar's one of Shar's domains, as well as being a really cool darkness-themed domain for the character. It also makes us incredibly strong early on, and this build gets to start from the jump with one of the most powerful class levels that you can take initially. For our cantrip for Death Domain Cleric, though, we're actually not going to take Toll the Dead with this cantrip. Toll the Dead and Bursting Sinew are available on the default Cleric cantrip spell list, so we don't need to select them as our special cantrip from Death Domain. Instead, we're going to take Bone Chill, because Bone Chill is not available to Clerics by default, and this gives us another option. Preventing enemies from healing is very useful in a lot of encounters, so while Bone Chill will typically be lower damage than Toll the Dead, there's a lot of encounters where enemies are going to heal, and Bone Chill prevents that. It's incredibly powerful in Act 2 as well, because it can give undead disadvantage on attacks, so this remains a very relevant cantrip throughout the game, especially for a Death Domain Cleric who can split it across multiple undead, giving them both disadvantage on their attack rolls. An AoE blind, effectively, is an incredibly powerful ability to have on a cantrip, and that's what you get when you're a Death Domain Cleric with Bone Chill fighting against undead. For our cantrips that we're selecting from our Cleric levels, we are, of course, grabbing Toll the Dead here, because this is our main damage source. A d12 of damage for a Wisdom save is incredibly strong. Something else to note about taking Bone Chill and Toll the Dead, too, is that gives you an attack roll targeting an armor class targeting cantrip with an attack roll and a saving throw targeting cantrip, so you get access to both. So against enemies with low wisdom saves, you can use Toll the Dead. Against enemies with low armor class, you can use Bone Chill. And so it gives you a great variety of different options for your cantrips. We'll also take Guidance, of course, because every character that can have access to Guidance should grab it. And for our last cantrip here, I'm just going to take Bursting Sinew because it's fun, and an AoE damage cantrip gives us even more cool options in combat. This one is a little more situational than the other two, and you don't really need 3 combat cantrips, but it's the new cool tech, so we're going to use it. And it also gives us some good options for combats where enemies are clustered around a dead body. AoE damage on a cantrip is pretty exciting. For our ability score selection, this character gets to get away with the greediest attribute split because we're effectively single attribute dependent. We only need wisdom for all of the things that this character is going to do. So we're going to start with 16 dexterity, 17 wisdom, and 15 constitution, and then we'll even out these scores later. If you really care about not having odd numbers, you can take like 12 in strength and take these as 14 and 16 and then switch to this attribute split later on. That's certainly an option, but just to keep things simple, we're going to take the odd numbers early. This is the highest possible attribute points that you can get at level 1, and is going to let us have 16 constitution while still maxing out our wisdom. For our skill selection here, this character is not going to be your party face or lockpicking typically, so you don't need to care that much about what skills you pick. So just grab whatever you want here for flavor, and that's it for level 1, so let's move on to level 2. Also, just to quickly go over our prepared spells at level 1, we're going to grab Healing Word, Bless, Command, and Sanctuary. This is going to enable us to keep our allies safe, lock down enemies if we need to stop them from acting, and of course both Bless and Healing Word are excellent utility spells that allow you to have a lot of support for your party. You don't need a level 1 damage spell because we have 3 damage cantrips, and if you do need more damage, you can technically cast Ray of Sickness, though I would typically avoid spending a spell slot on this spell. You're better off just double casting Toll the Dead, it's more damage anyways. At character level 2, we're immediately leaving Cleric, and we're going to take a level of Druid. This is going to give our character even more combat options, including the ability to fight in melee, which, with our level 2 Death Domain Cleric ability, is actually a pretty respectable option for this character, because we'll get extra damage whenever we hit with a melee attack. As well, this will give us even more reliable damage as a bonus action when we hit our second level of Druid at level 3. For our cantrip selection from Druid, we're going to take Shillelagh here and Thorn Whip. I'm happy to just take all of the combat cantrips, normally I recommend not taking a bunch of different combat cantrips, because you'll typically spend your turn just casting the best one. But for this character in particular, having this many options for different effects on your combat cantrips means that you always have the right tool for the job, no matter what encounter it is. And because this character has such great sustained damage, even without spending spell slots, having a wealth of options for your combat cantrips means that you'll always have relevant tactical options. Thorn Whip will also be very, very good as we level up in Druid and can use it in combination with Spike Growth and effects like that. If you don't feel like you need 5 combat cantrips, you can swap one of them out for resistance. I'd recommend swapping Bursting Sinew out for resistance in our Cleric level, because 5 is obviously a lot, but it's fun just having a different cantrip to cast every turn of combat. For prepared spells at our Druid level here, we already have Healing Word, but we can now pick up Longstrider, which is more great utility for the party, Create Water, Fog Cloud, and Entangle, which gives us an AoE control effect. So now we have single target control, area of effect control, great AoE damage, and great multi-target damage, as well as a tremendous amount of utility for the party. So we're bringing pretty much everything to the table right from the second level because of how many options these two classes get in combination. At character level 3, our damage and utility both get a massive increase, and our character becomes even more reliable when we take our second level of Druid and take the Circle of the Stars Druid. So we're using 2 new subclasses for this build. Firstly, we get Guidance, so you can use a respec here and swap Guidance for Resistance out in your Cleric level in order to have all the utility cantrips as well as all of the damage cantrips. And we get these star maps, which allow us to cast Guiding Bolt. A star map is a special resource that at this level you get 2 of every day, so it just gives you 2 extra casts of Guiding Bolt every day. That's even more damage, so when you want to spend a resource on more ranged damage, you can now use these free casts of Guiding Bolt for a ton of damage instead of spending a cantrip. You also get these these starry forms, which let you spend a wild shape. Don't know why I couldn't say that word for some reason, but we got there in the end. Which let you spend a wild shape charge to assume one of these forms for the entire day. Each of them gives you a unique ability. All of these are excellent, and which of them you're going to use depends a little bit on your party composition and what you want from your character out of a given day or a given or a given wild shape charge, because you can change them during the day by expending a new wild shape charge. Archer form gives you a bonus action 60-foot range, d8 plus your wisdom modifier, radiant damage spell. So in combination with double casting Toll the Dead, that's 2d12 plus a d8 plus your wisdom. So an absurd amount of damage for a level 3 character at range. It's basically like a max level Eldritch Blast that this character gets at 3rd level. And Starry Form Dragon gives you the same amount of damage, or even more damage, in an AoE. It's shorter range, but it's an area of effect cone, so you can hit multiple enemies with it. And also always does damage, even if enemies make the saving throw. Dragon Form also gives you incredibly strong benefits to your concentration saves. So that's going to be really important later on when we're concentrating to maintain a spell. And even at this level, we're often going to be concentrating on Bless or something. Later on, maintaining concentration on Spirit Guardians will make Dragon Form incredibly useful for us, because that can often be a challenge for clerics, and Dragon Form more or less solves that. Chalice Form gives you a free heal every turn without spending an action at all. And since this character already has a ton of healing, we've got Healing Word, we have a lot of other healing effects from our spells as we level up. Especially, we're one of the best users for the buff on heal items that can apply Bless and Blade Ward to your allies in the entire game. So Chalice Healing doubles down on that for even more application of those extremely powerful buffs. So all 3 of these are very useful. If your party needs more damage at this level, I recommend Archer Form. It lets you play a little safer. Later on, we'll swap to Dragon Form. And if your party needs more healing, then obviously you go with Chalice Form. Also useful to note is that both Archer Form and Dragon Form let you do damage with a bonus action, which can be used to reduce enemy health. before casting Toll the Dead, so you always get the increased damage from Toll the Dead now. So there's even more synergy between these abilities because it lets you proc the improved effect of Toll the Dead without even needing an ally to chip damage the enemy first. At character level 4, we have an interesting choice. We can either continue to level in Druid in order to get access to second level spells right away, including the very powerful Moonbeam and Spike Growth, or we can go back and level up in Cleric in order to reach Cleric level 5 as quickly as possible and get access to Spirit Guardians. By the time we're level 7, we're going to want to be 5 Cleric and 2 Druid because Spirit Guardians is just so good, so I'm going to recommend leveling up in Cleric. But if you're playing this character through the game one level at a time, of course, then you may want to level in Druid up until level 6, and then respec to Cleric 5 Druid 2 with the build that I'm going to show you here, starting at character level 7, just to maintain the highest possible power peak throughout the game. That's one way that you can do that. Nevertheless, we're going to take a level of Cleric here, which gives us now Channel Divinity Touch of Death, so we can deal extra necrotic damage with our melee attack. Remember, we have Shillelagh from our Druid levels, so we can hit enemies for a pretty hefty burst of melee damage if the situation requires it. No other significant bonuses at Cleric level 2, though, so let's jump to Cleric level 3. At Cleric level 3, we get access to second level Cleric spells, which increases our power and utility dramatically, but we also have third level spell slots, so remember that you can upcast our lower level spells. We can hold person multiple enemies if we need to. We can cast Aid on our whole party for a bonus of 10 hit points to the entire party using a third level spell slot. That's a totally reasonable use for a third level spell slot for this character. We also have Spiritual Weapon, which can't be upcast, but can be used to distract enemies from our party members, which is very useful as well. For our prepared Cleric spells at this level, I'm going to recommend having Healing Word, Command, Bless, and Sanctuary still prepared. Remember, we had get Create Water from our Druid levels, as well as Spiritual Weapon and Hold Person. This gives us a great mix of control spells, a bonus action utility spell that can be used to block doorways and distract enemies, as well as all of our supporting spells that we have been using throughout the entire game. At character level 6, we get our first feat, and the feat that we are going to take is of course an ability improvement to boost our constitution up to 16 and our wisdom up to 18. This makes our consistent damage even more consistent and higher with our higher wisdom, and also is going to make us even better at maintaining concentration on Spirit Guardians, which we're going to get next level. For our cantrip selection at this level, you can go back and grab a utility cantrip. Remember, we could have respec'd to pick up Resistance or Blade Ward earlier, so I'm going to recommend grabbing the other of those two, whichever one you didn't pick up. Blade Ward is pretty nice for this character because sometimes you're just going to be running in with Spirit Guardians active, and Blade Ward can help, again, prevent you from losing concentration on Spirit Guardians because it reduces incoming damage, and we are so much better at rolling concentration saves because of the dragon aspect of the Star Druid. At character level 7, we pick up Cleric level 5, which of course gets us Spirit Guardians, as well as Animate Dead, so we have even more summons running around, and Mass Healing Word, which is another very useful spell for this character. We have been using the buff on heal gear extensively at this point in the game, so we are able to now apply all of that as a bonus action to our entire party. For our prepared spells at this level, I'm going to recommend grabbing Glyph of Warding and Spirit Guardians as our main combat spells, and then Mass Healing Word in order to buff our allies, so this should be a pretty solid spell list, giving you great damage. Of course, Spirit Guardians for radiant damage, we all know how good that is, but remember that this can be used in combination with our cantrips. So, and our cantrips have also gotten stronger as we've now leveled up. So our Spirit Guardians is dealing damage every turn. Our Toll the Dead is dealing damage twice every turn. Our Star Forms are dealing damage as a bonus action every turn. So the amount of just constant damage that this character is outputting, while also controlling, debuffing enemies, and buffing and healing allies, is phenomenal, especially now that we have this incredible source of constant damage and debuffing with Radiant Orbs online. At character level 8, we're going to go back to taking Druid levels. This gets us second level Druid spells, which even this late are still pretty relevant. Both Spike Growth and Moonbeam are very powerful spells to have access to, even this late in the game, because you can concentrate on Moonbeam from Sanctuary. That cheese is still in the game in patch 8, and Spike Growth can be used with Thorn Whip for a ton of extra damage or pushing enemies across it. Still shuts down melee enemies, even at later levels, so getting these spells is still very good. This also is going to let us get our feat as soon as possible, and get us the very, very powerful later level Druid class features and spells from the Star Druid. At character level 9, we get to max out our Wisdom, so we're going to take a feat here for an ability improvement and pick up 20 Wisdom. If you're playing with extra feats in some way, then of course the best feat to pick up is going to be Alert. One of the only downsides of this character, which otherwise has very, very few weaknesses, is it's got relatively low initiative because we don't pick up Alert, which is, in honor mode, something that can be a problem. So you are going to want initiative gear to boost this character's initiative. If you're using like feats at even levels or a mod along those lines, then Alert would be the first feat that I would pick up, in addition to maxing out our Wisdom. For our cantrip selection, unfortunately, we can't take True Strike to annoy people in the comments, so we're going to do the next best thing and pick up Poison Spray, and move on to character level 10. Yes, you were not hallucinating that. I did forget what Poison Spray was called because of how infrequently I take that spell. Character level 10 again gets us some very solid utility spells, so even though we're not getting higher level spells at this level, because we're a level 5 Druid, we now get 2 more great spells, which give us even better combat options in the form of Plant Growth, which again, absolutely ruinous to melee enemies, and Sleet Storm, which is one of the best AoE control spells in the game. When enemies fall over on the ice, they lose the rest of their turn, so if you put this on a big group of enemies, then creating an ice surface can cost enemies a ton of turns. Even getting this at level 10 remains one of the most powerful spells in the game. Your concentration is usually going to be used on Spirit Guardians, of course, but having the opportunity to Sleet Storm is very good as well. For our prepared spells at this level, for that reason, we're going to add in Sleet Storm and Plant Growth, while leaving our other prepared spells from earlier levels basically the same. To finish off this character, we are going to continue to level in Druid, getting the higher level Star Druid options. Cosmic Omens is a very powerful ability as well. Whenever you long rest, you get either an omen of weal or woe. This gives you a few charges that you can use every day to increase or decrease attack rolls or saving throws, or skill checks, though typically you're not going to want to use it on skill checks. You can increase skill checks if you have the weal version of the Cosmic Omen. The better version of this is woe. So if you're going to long rest in order until you get the one that you actually want, then woe is the one that you're looking for. Because Cosmic Omen woe is effectively a cast of cutting words, which is incredibly powerful, especially for a character like this that is often casting control spells like command or hold person. Decreasing enemy saving throws and forcing them to fail the save against command or hold person are very, very valuable effects. So having that as a reaction on a character that isn't a lore bard is awesome, and of course can be stacked with cutting words if you also have a lore bard in your party to really reduce enemy saving throws. So this ability, very powerful. Anything that manipulates die rolls is always very good, so grabbing this from level 6 Druid just makes the character even more reliable. And finally, at character level 12, we're going to take our 7th level of Druid to get 4th level Druid spells. 4th level Druid spells is one of the bigger power spikes in the game, because the 4th level Druid spells are just so good. Most other spellcasters get their biggest power spike when they get their level 3 spells, but for Druids, it's their level 4 spells. A lot of these will solve encounters all by themselves, and they give us a lot of great combat options to spend our spell slots on, in addition to our higher level slots, which are mostly going to go to Spirit Guardians. Wall of Fire, even this late in the game, can be used to win some encounters all by itself. Typically, this role is going to be played by Spirit Guardians for this character, but Wall of Fire is still useful. But more importantly, we get Conjure Woodland Being, which is the best summon in the game. For a 4th level spell slot, the amount of utility and control that you get from this just can't be beaten, so incredibly valuable there. Confusion, which is another great AoE control spell, and Ice Storm, which is another great AoE control spell that also has a damage component and doesn't require concentration, as well as Freedom of Movement, which is a great panic button. There's actually too many good Druid spells at this level, so our spell preparation did get a little bit harder, but we're going to go ahead and grab Conjure Woodland Being, Ice Storm, and Confusion to make sure that we have all of those great level 4 options, and Sleet Storm from earlier levels. Looks like my spell preparations got a little messed up, so let's just quickly redo this spell list. So we're going to be taking Longstrider, Entangle, and Fog Cloud are both still very useful to have at this point in the game. Spike Growth and Moonbeam for other concentration options from low level. Sleet Storm, Ice Storm, Confusion, and Conjure Woodland Being are the most important combat spells at level 4, and then Freedom of Movement is a great panic button. You don't want to cast this with a spell slot at the beginning of the day, but if an ally gets stunned, Freedom of Movement, just having this as a spell prepared, is very useful for breaking them out of that. In addition to these spells, you have a couple more options. Enhanced Leap is always good. It can be ritually cast just to make your whole party more mobile before combat. At this point in the game, you probably have flight or other ways to be more mobile, so the Enhanced Leap may not be as useful, but still can be helpful. And then you can grab whatever you want for your utility. Thunder Wave to keep enemies off you, Goodberry for the additional healing that you can get from that, Plant Growth if you're worried about melee enemies, or Wall of Fire if there's an encounter coming up that it's particularly good against. Bonus action casting Grasping Vine is also totally reasonable for this character. A Grasping Vine can be used to keep enemies in Spike Growth or in your Spirit Guardian's attacks. So for this build, that's what I'm going to grab, just because it's a fun spell that you don't see used that often, but the last spell is kind of up to you. All right, my friends, that is the Daughter of Twilight at its full level extent. But of course we can make the character stronger through use of gear and items, so let's talk about those. 4 items for this character. We get access to 2 of the most powerful mechanics in Baldur's Gate 3, the buff on heal items and the radiating orbs items. Which of these you're using is going to be a little dependent on what else is in your party, how much healing you need, and so on, because one of the slots does conflict for this item set, but overall you're going to be wanting the buff on heal items earlier and the radiating orb items later. The buff on heal items, of course, are the Hellrider's Pride and the Whispering Promise, which allow you to apply Bless and Blade Ward to your allies whenever you heal them. This character, with the Chalice healing from Druid, Healing Word as a bonus action, and Mass Healing Word as a bonus action, is very good at applying these buffs. So keeping these items around, even until the late game, can be extremely helpful for your party. The Radiating Orb item set, of course, is the Callous Glow Ring, which adds 2 radiant damage to all of the damage you do against illuminated enemies. The Coruscation Ring, which inflicts Radiating Orb when you damage an enemy with a spell. And the Luminous Gloves, which inflict Radiating Orb when you deal radiant damage to an enemy, as well as the Luminous Armor, which this character is always going to wear because we just deal so much radiant damage. This is the best in slot armor by far for the character. With this item set, this character will always stack 10 Radiating Orbs in the first turn of combat, giving enemies a -10 penalty to their attack rolls and preventing them from attacking at all. A variation on this as well is you can use the Gloves of Belligerent Skies and the Boots of Stormy Clamor, which I recommend, again, the Boots of Stormy Clamor regardless, but the Gloves of Belligerent Skies in addition to those can be very helpful for stacking Reverberation in addition to Radiating Orb, and that will cause enemies to take thunder damage and be knocked prone. So in addition to giving enemies the attack penalty, you'll also be knocking them prone. My endgame setup for this character would be the Boots of Stormy Clamor and Gloves of Belligerent Skies, Callous Glow and Coruscation Ring, and the Luminous Armor, but these other 4 items can be, these other 3 items, can be mixed in at various points in the game in order to get the maximum value out of the character as you are leveling up. In addition to that, since this is a spellcaster, the best in slot weapon is almost always Marka Heshkir. In the early game, you can use the Staff of Arcane Blessing if you have a character that's making spell attack rolls, but importantly, this character is making spell attack rolls. So if you bless yourself and then are attacking using Bone Chill, then you gain 2d4 plus 2d4 on the attack rolls with the Staff of Arcane Blessing because of this boosting the attacks that you make with spell attacks. So the Staff of Arcane Blessing, very good for this character in the early game. Then you can swap to the Devotee's Mace for the Healing Incense aura if you're a more healing-focused version of the build, the Blood of Lathander for the Undead aura, and of course Marka Heshkir in the late game because you're a spellcaster. Finally, you're going to want ways to boost your initiative and save DCs, so items like the Sentinel Shield and the Fistbreaker Helm, which I forgot to put in the character's inventory, will boost your initiative and save DCs. Initiative boosts are very important for this character because, of course, we only have 16 dexterity and no alert, so we want to invest increases in our initiative on this character. I usually like to hit about a +8 bonus on initiative, so items like this and the Hellrider Longbow that can be used to boost your initiative using your ranged weapon slot are very important for this character, and boosts to our save DCs, of course, are valuable whenever we're casting spells like Command or Hold Person to make those go off more reliably. With all of these items together, this character gets several of the most powerful mechanics in the game. You're one of the best characters in the game at applying Radiating Orb because you do so with your main action, your bonus action, and just passively with Spirit Guardians, because you have additional radiant damage that you can do, like with a Guiding Bolt, for example. And every turn, the worst case scenario for damage for this character is incredibly high, because you have Spirit Guardians, you have doubled Toll the Dead, and you have your bonus action Star Map shot, your bonus action Star Druid shot. So you are always going to be doing great consistent damage, in addition to all of the utility and control that this character provides. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at the Daughter of Twilight. This build should be an excellent addition to any Honor Mode party and is one of my strong recommendations if you're looking for a way to try out the new subclasses when patch 8 launches. Now, I should mention, of course, that this is playtest content. This build might change by the time the patch has actually fully launched. But for now, I think that this is one of the best possible characters in the early game and get some of the best access to some of the most powerful mechanics in the game in the late game, making it a phenomenal addition to any Honor Mode party that should last you from level 1 to 12 while being very powerful at every level along the way. As always, of course, if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a comment and hit the like button. Helps me out with the algorithm, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Then you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 build guides with patch 8 and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, my friends. I'll catch you next time.